It's being broadcast by Milford TV. If anyone would like a copy of tonight's meeting, please let us know. I also have just a quick announcement to make before we get started. And unfortunately, a student at Woodland School passed away over the weekend. His name was Asen Andrade Sacco. Sorry, I apologize. So if we could just have a moment of silence for him. Appreciate that. So tonight's agenda is to discuss the Milford school budget for fiscal year 2018. You know, obviously we've had a number of conversations about the budget over the last few weeks. We had asked for some information from the town. Your committee had asked for some information from Kathy as well. And all the information was exchanged over the course of the past week, and I assume everyone's had an opportunity to review it. So if it's okay with everyone, what I thought we could do is have Kevin start with the Milford budget proposal and go through some of his slides, and then from there we could potentially open it up to have you and Zach talk through what we can afford from the town side, and then we can get into some of the data that was exchanged hands over the course of the past week. Does that make sense?
Except that this is a FinCom meeting, not a school committee meeting. We called this meeting 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I'd like to start.
So, so we posted at a school committee meeting as well. We did check with Jerry to see what the protocol is, and Jerry confirmed that because it is posted at a school committee meeting and it is occurring within the schools that we would govern the meeting. So, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as we go through the information,
yeah, whatever.
That's all that matters, right? So
you start.
All right. So do you mind going through?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Jump in. So everybody has a packet at their spot. It's the presentation. It's front and back, so I want to go through it relatively quickly. Some of it's information that everybody already has available. If you want to shift to page 2, our level service budget for fiscal 17-18 is $46,697,608, which represents a 5.9% increase over the 16-17 school year. We had new initiatives approved for $328,796, and we also had $773,604, which reduced the amount covered through budget reductions and revolving allocations. The result is a 2.41% request for the general budget and a 2.5% request for special education and English learners. So the total FY 2018 request is $46,252,800. The next slide, this is on page 2, is the approved budget initiatives by the school committee. If you shift to page 3, we outline the summary of budget reductions and reallocations, and these are a combination of local appropriation reductions as well as revolving expense reallocations. And that amount comes to $773,604. The next slide on page 3 just outlines the salary contract obligations, which is $1,599,747. The bulk of that comes from the teacher contract union increases, much smaller amounts from ASME and non-union. If you shift to page 4, we have an out-of-district increase of $803,974. The bulk of that comes from 4 students that moved in, or 4 families that moved into the district after April 1st. The remaining amount is the private school tuition increases year over year. The second slide on page 4 is transportation department savings, and it kind of outlines it in detail. We talked about this. We purchased a 71 passenger bus this fiscal year. We'll realize a savings of approximately $88,516 between preschool, field trips, and athletic trips. If you shift to page 5, this is just a breakdown of the increases in instruction, material, consumables, and maintenance, which comes to $169,188 and outlines that. The second slide on page 5 just talks about the health insurance liability potential reduction, which comes from, hold on one second. which comes from a savings from the reduction in 15 BATA positions, which the potential liability reduction could be $277,469.70, and 2 teaching positions, which comes to $36,996 for a total of $314,465.73, and potential liability reduction to the town, which is not reflected in any of the budget numbers.
Kevin, just for clarity's sake, those are from attrition, not from any
Correct.
proposed layoffs.
Correct.
I had somebody reach out to me that was concerned about losing their job who's a TA. Just want to be clear, that's from attrition, not from layoffs. So they would not have any unemployment.
That, as you said, that has no effect on the operating budget. If you want it to have an effect, there's an 8% increase in overall health insurance for the town, which is about $1.5 million, and you guys, we cover that in net school spending. So that number is not operational costs at all. And neither are the revolving accounts, by the way. That's okay.
Correct.
Moving on.
Correct on both points. All right, the next piece is, this is just a response to the presentation the Finance Subcommittee made at our last meeting. And I just want to clarify a few of the points presented in the budget sheet, Mark. The first one is the special education surplus of $884 was actually reduced from the 2017 budget. And
So
Cat-
that means you kept it.
no, it came off the top.
You didn't give it back to the general fund. You
Oh,
took it off of your budget.
Correct.
Right.
You kept it.
Yep.
It was reduced
Okay.
from the budget number,
Right. So
Which
you
in- which in-
utilized the money, is what I'm saying.
which in effect is a reduction. We didn't utilize the money because we reduced
It
it.
depends on how you look at it. From a perspective of the general fund, it should have gone back to the general fund. But go ahead. Do we understand, or we're not clear?
No, I think we have a disagreement.
No, you had a budget last year, and you presented that budget to us, and you reduced that overall increase by the $850,000 of surplus, which meant you utilized the $853,000 in your budget to reduce the overall increase to the town. So you kept the money.
At a result of a net savings of $853,884 to the
Whatever.
town.
But see, that should have gone to the general fund, and we should have discussed your budget without that number in there. That's okay.
We did discuss
take
the
it back
budget.
this
We
year.
did discuss the budget number without that budget in there.
No,
Yeah, the 2017.
Kat, do you want to hand out the sheet to the finance?
I have the sheet. You gave
You
it
have
to
the
us.
17, yep,
No, that's the 18 number. This is last year's number.
Yep.
right, 17.
And last year's sheet did show that the total budget would have been a little over 5%.
Right.
And then the 800,000 brought it down to that 3.5, but that was very transparent on that sheet last year.
I understand that. But the point being, I have it, it's right here.
Yeah.
Okay, the point being that I have it. The 800, you wanna pass it out, fine.
I don't know if the other members have it, though.
I'm sorry, that's fine. The point being that the number you should have started with, it was 853,000 more than you asked for. And in negotiating the budget for last year, we would have discussed how to reduce that budget even further from the 850, but you already took the 853 as a reduction. So that left us no negotiating position on either side. That should have been returned to the general fund like everybody else does. Everybody else in every other department, when they have a surplus, it goes to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And we talk about their budget the next year without that number in there, as a raw number. And that's not what you did. So we'll take it back this year, it's not a problem. I've already highlighted that. Go ahead.
That's, we'll talk about that later.
Yep,
Keep
we can
going.
talk
on.
about that
Otherwise,
later.
we get derailed.
Yeah.
So the second one was there was no adjustment to the 2017 budget based on the Milford School Committee retaining middle school east during the 16-17 school year. The amount cited was an estimate to operate east during the current fiscal year and was not a budgeted amount. Cafeteria table, science kits, science textbooks, math textbooks, classroom furniture, REACH curriculum appeared on budget sheets over the past 2 years and were often covered by one-time expenses as the budget cycle progressed, or were part of replacement costs that occur as part of our standard operations. Middle school east utilities and maintenance number of 300,000, again, was not a budgeted number, but a number that was used it was used for Middle School East Reuse Committee as an estimate for fully running Middle School East as a fully operational building. The cost of operating Middle School East in the old Woodland Elementary School was actually less than the projected operating costs of the new Woodland Elementary School. because the scope of use of the building has increased. The transportation savings of $88,516 was factored into our proposed FY18 budget based on the purchase of a new vehicle and projected savings for preschool transportation, athletic and field trips, and that's been pulled out for the 18 budget. Had no impact on the 17 budget. The other question I had, Mark, and I'd love for you to kind of clarify this when we get back to your portion of the presentation, is the electrical reduction in expense contractual tech. I wasn't sure where you came up with that number, so.
I got it from the finance director.
Yeah, so if you can just clarify that for us when
Sure.
we get back.
Yeah,
That's just a
sure.
question that I had. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So now I'm on, I'm sorry, page 7. I lost track as we got discussing. This is just some data points on the Milford per pupil average compared to the state average, and we've shared this information before, but I want to include it in your packet. It's not new information. The second sheet is just for a frame of reference. This is the second slide on 7. The Milford teacher average salary comparison. We put some local communities as well as the Massachusetts state averages and compared it to our teacher salaries, just so you have that point of reference. I think it's an interesting data point.
Per pupil average compared to the districts around us, not the state average. 'Cause
I can get, I don't have that here in this presentation, but I can get that information.
Yeah, it was in the,
But it's very comparable. But Milford is very much in line with districts around us. compared to
We
the
may
state.
have shared that in another packet.
So-
I don't have it in this one.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
Desi, and I included it in the slides that I sent over. And so to your point, Milford's comparable with some of the local communities, but not all. Now keep in mind, the big driver behind the difference is that we don't share the same demographics, right? And so the cost of educating an ELL student, the cost of educating a special ed student is gonna be higher. So our costs on average should be higher than the Hollisons and Hopedales and Hopkintons, because they don't have that same population.
I don't totally agree with that, because if you look at the demographics on that Mass DCE site, it puts the demographics in there. Not only does it do that, and I hear to your point, I hear that, that's number one reason why we shouldn't use the state average, because of demographics. Number two, it's all well and good that, we're all in the same park with all the other districts around us. We're at the bottom of MCAS, bottom of SATs, bottom of graduation. So how does that, you're gonna pull it all on demographics? We can talk about it, but, sorry, Kevin.
We'll talk about it, and we'll certainly get into the details.
All right.
Sure.
Let's shift to page 9. Oh, I'm sorry, page 8. So this is the 10-year school budget funding analysis, and this just breaks down the school approved budgets over the last 10 years, the Chapter 70 allocation, the local allocation, and the local impact increase, just year over year for the last 10 years. The next slide is just, I just want to remind the committee of last year's school choice numbers and hopefully the direction we're heading in. The outgoing, and this is page 8 as well. The outgoing increase was 1.01% year over year, which is the lowest increase in the last 5 years. The incoming increase was 26.25%, which is the largest increase in the last 3 years. Families that have choiced out, again, are unlikely to return, but we'll see a shift in the numbers over time if this trend continues, and that's really what we're looking to do.
And those school choice numbers don't include people or students that choice out to BVT.
So
correct?
BVT isn't a choice out, that's
I just
a
wanted to make sure
different,
that
yeah.
doesn't include
So this
that.
is strictly, so when it's school choice,
Right.
this doesn't include private schools, because that's just a separate choice a family would make at
Right.
any point in a child's education
This
career.
is
Does not
district-
include,
one town
yeah,
district,
this is
yeah.
other public school districts generally surrounding the Milford Public School.
Put it in layman's terms, this is a Milford resident with a Milford school-age student that chooses
To
to
go
apply and
Hopedale.
send their student to Hopedale as an example. We then have to take the funding that we would receive for that student and send it to Hopedale. That's just for the benefit of not just the members here, but anyone who may be watching it.
Yeah. Kevin, I just have a quick question on the funding.
Yep,
Just going back, I mean, we had a Chapter 70 increase of just $3,500. Is that what I'm looking at?
that's a local impact increase, so that's basically the difference in the local contribution year over year.
Okay, but Chapter 70 actually went up somewhat, $500,000, thereabouts?
2 million.
Yeah, close to 2
Oh,
million.
no, 2
About
million.
1.7.
2 million.
1.7 million, give or take.
Okay.
This year, right now, we expect a little over 23 million. The governor's proposal was 23 million. The House Ways and Means today approved something a little bit higher than that, so we'll see where we end up settling, but at a minimum, we're looking at 23 million.
I don't necessarily agree with the outgoing choice numbers. It went up over 10%. It was 1.1 last year, it was 1.2 something this year. It's almost
Are you
1 point.
talking, I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking actual students.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
you're talking actual students.
I'm not talking the dollar amounts, this is students, just so you have the data correct. So the number of students.
Okay.
I'm not looking at the dollars in or dollars out on this one. I'm just looking at number of students in, number of students out.
But that's a misnomer because a student can choice out to a lower costing school system.
It's the same, no, it's the same amount that goes in or out for dollars.
I'm sure it's the cost of
Explain that
where you
a
go.
little
So there's, I think, what's the number, Kath, for the school choice?
Is there just like a
It's an
state,
assessment by the state,
Yeah, it's either 7,000 or 8,000, I wanna say.
and the only difference might be if it's a special ed student with significant service, they might bump up the assessment. Other than
Correct.
that, it's the same.
But otherwise, it doesn't matter the district that they go to, it's the same amount in or out. Except if the student has special needs or, correct. All right, let's shift to 9. This is just the number of teachers in the Milford Public Schools over the past 10 years. We don't have the 17 data yet, from the state, but basically, we're probably down about 6 teachers net over the last 10 years.
look, you started at a high point in 2007, but if you look at the average, we're at a high point.
It's fluctuated a little bit over
Yeah,
years.
it's-
Yeah, it's gone from a
that's
high
why
of
I'm looking at
326
the
to a low
average.
of, it looks like 312. We're at about 321 right now.
I mean,
Right.
worst
We've
case
only,
scenario.
we've only been higher
But-
2 other times in the last 10 years.
Yep, that's accurate.
Those numbers are correct. What you don't show here is your administration increases, over 25 employees over the last 5 years.
So actually, that's the next slide. And it just depends on how you're defining administration. But the way the DESE defines it is in terms of a cost code. If you look at our numbers compared to the state numbers, we're well below. And again, you can make the argument of, is this a valid way to look at it or not? It's one of the metrics that we have.
It's not a question of whether it's a valid or invalid way to look at it, or whether we're here to argue about it. The question is, you're increasing your administration and your staff, which increases your costs. And as you grow, your year-over-year costs increase better than 2.5%. And that's the concern, in general. Your contracts are higher than 2.5%. They're over 3% and change. And the only amount we're allowed to raise the levy is 2.5%, it's Prop 2.5. So if every department, including yours, which is the largest amount of employees and the largest amount of healthcare insurance costs and everything else, increases year over year at greater than 5%, we're gonna run out of money in a hurry, because that line's gonna cross over, and we're not ready to do that from this side of the table. So that's why we're trying to keep these numbers to a reasonable place, because we understand that raises are raises and people get 3.5%. Us poor slobs on Social Security get 0.1%, but that's okay. We can afford it. But the point is, that's where the issue is.
Well, one of the things,
Your
Mark, that's
overhead
driving,
costs are way out of line.
one of the things that's driving our numbers, to be perfectly frank, and I know Kathy shared the year-over-year data with the teacher salaries, is that the percentage of teachers that are on the top step, that aren't on the top step, has gone up over the past few. Our teaching force is getting younger, basically,
Right.
and what that means is that they're increasing at a higher rate until they get to that top step, where we have a little bit more cost containment.
And we understand that, and that's the point. That's why your 3.5% contract increase, or 3.25% contract increase is a misnomer. Because on average, teachers are getting 8 and 9% because they're at the lower level and they're growing at a faster rate. And that's a contractual issue that you, as a school committee, need to take under advisement and figure out how to manage that from a town point of view, a town expenditure point of view. And that's all we're saying. And so when you come back to us with a 5, 6, or 4, 5, or 6% overall budget increase, everybody goes, that's crazy, because you're gonna put us out of the ballpark in no time. And that's why we're going through this exercise to figure out how we can accommodate the district as well as accommodate the general public in town who pay taxes, and most of which don't have kids in the school anymore. So, and the town supports the school the best way we can, we believe, and it's up to your group to administer that amount of money and do the best you can for the kids. So we could talk numbers back and forth, we could talk percentages, we could talk, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were finished or not. but-
No, I've got a few more to go.
All right, go ahead. I'll hold it.
All right, good. Because you were on a roll, too.
I was. And guess what? It's Passover, so I'm even better today.
He hasn't eaten.
And it's Holy Week, so, we're all good.
So,
Oh, I forgot we're
I
not
just wanted to
supposed to
share
talk
some
about
kind
that.
of
Cool.
additional key data points that weren't budget related, just to put some of this into context. We're in the process of developing our next strategic plan, and we have basically 4 strategic goals, which revolve around growth-focused instruction, learning and assessment, social emotional learning, continuous learning, and equity and access. If you shift to page 11, one of the numbers that I'm particularly proud of that's happened in the last 10 years is the advanced placement participation. We started at 190, and this is 2007, we were giving AP tests obviously before then, but in 2007 we had 196 students sit for AP exams. In 2016 that number's up to 492, and I believe it's gonna be even higher this coming year.
That's in all grades or just high school?
The high school, so that's 9 through 12, so there's.
The only place AP exists.
It tends to be juniors and seniors mostly, but we are starting to offer some classes at the freshman and sophomore level. And students are taking advantage of it.
There's the only place in an AP class can English. You can't have a college level class.
But these tests will exempt you from a college class. If you
Potentially.
pass.
Yeah,
if you get a certain, you
save
gotta
all
get a
that money.
certain level.
Get a certain
So if you
grade.
pass the
Yeah.
exam,
You get to, it's a college, it's by design a college course.
Yeah, so it's
That-
worth the
that-
kids $100 to take the test.
Oh, there's
If they
no
can wipe
question.
out if they
Right.
can wipe out a course in college, it's worth
Correct.
the money.
Yep.
Plus it helps for admission as well to more selective colleges.
Yeah.
They look that you
Right.
take the more
I mean, the
rigorous
courses certainly
classes.
are more strenuous.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, they're run as college.
They wanna make sure we get Mike and Zach out of here on time for their meeting too, so.
All right, let me roll, let me keep
Yeah,
rolling.
right, he's gotta leave,
Right.
he's gotta leave, so.
Yeah.
All right, the next slide is just the SAT scores for Milford compared to the national averages. I just want to give you a sense of where we stood compared to
Okay,
the
not to
rest of
interrupt
the
you again,
country.
I appreciate the data. We can make this data spin whatever. Everything is state, and all of a sudden we pull national, and I know why we pull national, because we stink against the state. We're below the state average. So we use national for the SATs, but yet everything else we use state for. Why is that?
Well, one of the reasons we do that too is because Massachusetts is the highest performing state in the country.
Even more of a reason, right? That
Yeah.
will show where Milford stands.
Yep.
And it's not that we'll get into it.
So I don't want to go into detail, I'm just going to give you this, these are some of the key initiatives. One thing I want to point the Finance Committee to is the Early College Dual Enrollment Program. We've offered 3 courses this year that are directly college courses that students have taken. One upper level math course for students who've already maxed out of even the AP courses, and they're taking a class that's actually, I think, an upper level college course, because they've already, again, maxed out of the high school and the AP courses. And then 2 science courses we've offered. We're hoping to expand that program. The reason we like the early college dual enrollment is AP colleges across the country have different policies connected to accepting AP credit based on student test results. These are actual college transcripts that students will be able to have. And
Do we have specialized teachers teach these classes?
they're
Or is
college
that-
professors.
They're college professors?
Yep. Correct.
So we only use them part-time, like 1 course a day?
There are a lot of, these have been either co-taught with one of our teachers or an after-school program is how we're starting it. This is the first year we've engaged in this practice. We hope to expand it in the future. All right, so these are the schools that, these are some of the highly selective colleges that students got into in 2016. I think it's a great list. What I wanted to also share with you is these are the high-frequency acceptances. I didn't list them all, but this is page 13, the top slide. These are schools that 10 or more students were accepted into in the class of 2016. just to give you a sense of where the students were applying and being accepted to in larger numbers. So I'm not just giving you the top schools that they're being accepted to. 2017, this year, this class has gotten into some great schools. We're also adding Princeton to this list, and this is again page 13, second slide. So the class of 2017, we've seen Harvard, Yale, and Princeton already. Acceptances are still rolling in, but a number of really highly selective colleges. And again, the high-frequency schools are pretty similar year over year. You see a lot of state universities, both in Massachusetts and outside of Massachusetts. We see a lot of kids at like places like UNH, URI, and UMaine, as well as all the UMass schools. And then lastly, the last page is really just an overview of the school committee proposal. 2.41% to the general budget, 2.5% to special education and ELL, for a total FY 2018 request of $46,252,800.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
So what I'd like to do now that you know the number that we want to move forward, the 46 million, I'd like to turn it over to Zach to go through how that impacts the town
I have
budget and
that.
kind of you'll go through that? All right, then we'll let you walk us through that.
I only brought Zach as a backup. I mean, Zach, you're perfectly capable of doing it if you want to do it. Be my guest.
Hey, that's a vote of confidence.
We, obviously you have all the data. I didn't realize you had it, and I was out of town last week, so I really couldn't sit down and go over it with anybody, because it's not that easy to understand. But yet, we'll try. We have a standard purchase P&L that we use on the finance committee to decide, to figure out how we go from revenue to expenses and come up with a number that we can present to town meeting. Again, a lot of these numbers are put in early on. We go through it on a weekly basis. Our financial advisor and Zach sit down and go over the revenue numbers. We used to use last year's numbers. We still use the year before numbers as an average. So any increases we'll see at the end in the fall, the following fall, for free cash. So we're conservative on the revenue side. If you look on the revenue side, you have one that's, I'm trying to go over the one that's exists today before any changes. But the one you have, the first page, talks about FY18 with a 3.75% school increase on the lower right-hand side. We were asked to come through a bunch of scenarios.
Yeah, let's
So we
use
did
use the 4.91.
No, I'd like to go
46
through
million.
what we have now before we go through the
Okay.
4.9. So so the one, if you follow along with the first page on the handout that I gave you, the only differences between that and the number that we used was a 2.5% increase for the school. This is what we start with, okay? We go through all, and these are the latest expense numbers that the different departments have put in their budgets, okay? So we know what those numbers are, and we put in 2.5% for the school. At that level, where expense with stabilization, let's start, budget expense, capital, operational budget, $98,778,704. That includes the 2.5% for the, 2.25% for the school. Then we add in $500,000 that we put into the stabilization account every year, and that helps pay off the debt, especially the $63 or $28 million that we put in for the new school, without impacting the operational cost and the operational budget, which impacts taxes. The overlay is something that the assessors put in. They come up with a number, and that fluctuates on an annual basis. And whenever there's extra overlay money, that comes back to the general fund, which ends up in free cash at the end of the fiscal year. Assessments, that's school choice and charter. This year, it's $1.39 million, which has gone up about $100,000 from last year. And it's not from the charter side, it's from the choice side. We budget $1.5 million for capital. We up until about 2 years ago, was 1 million. We increased it to 1.5 million, so we can handle a lot of the capital funding without going to overrides or outgoing to other areas where we have to take money out. So we budget for the 1.5 million. If we don't spend it, sometimes we don't, that sits there and falls to free cash for the following year. The levy adjustment is what we've been giving back to the tax rate on an annual basis. It fluctuates from 1 million at the low end, which we did about 8 or 9 or 10 years ago, and we're at about 3 million this year, and we will probably end up lower than that. My recommendation is always less than 3 million. 2 million is a reasonably good number. Because the problem is that once we eat up that levy capacity and not give it back to the tax rate, it's double the impact to the taxpayer the following year. We have to make up what we gave, plus we have to make up what we have to make up. So it's a double-edged sword. So we try to keep it to a place where it's doable year over year. Okay, it's sustainable. 2 million is sustainable, 3 million is pushing the envelope, in my opinion. On the left-hand side of the page is the revenue side. The levy for 2017 is 65,383,458. Add 2.5% to that is 1.6. We estimate new growth for the following year, and that's always a dice roll, if you will.
Would you say that's a conservative or aggressive estimate, Mark?
It's right there. I mean, last year was 900.
Right.
The year before was 400.
It's an average. We try to make an average.
It's
Some years
one of those things where like
you don't know.
The assessors really keep it close to chest, so you don't know until it's too late. Almost, I don't like it either.
But it's not excessive,
Okay.
and it's not under either.
Okay,
So
so
it's an
it's a
average.
fair number.
It's
Yeah,
reasonable.
fair
It's
number.
realistic.
Okay.
Local receipts at 7 million, that's based on last year's local receipts. And we expect, last year we had a huge increase in new cars. And so the excise tax numbers were higher, and that, for the last 2 years, we think that number is gonna go down a little bit. So we were a little bit conservative and dropped that number down a little bit as well. Sorry, Michael. Sorry. I said, sorry, before you had a chance. The cherry sheet, and we use the governor's proposal, which is the first thing that comes out, and we all know that fluctuates. It can go up, it can go down. That's $27,094,799. The room occupancy tax is what we get from the hotels around here. We increased that number 4 or 5 years ago. We were allowed to increase it another 0.5%, I believe. And that put another 500,000 in the revenue stream. And it didn't affect hardly anybody in town. We did not do the increase on the restaurant tax, because that would affect people in town. The offsets are what comes on the cherry sheet. I don't know what the $37,000 is. It's
Library.
like library offset rate. School choice in is $609,000 this year. And that goes to the school. Other available funds is sewer department receipts, and that's an enterprise fund, so that's a net zero to the balance sheet. So doing all those things with a 4.5% increase in retirement, with 8% health insurance increase, with a whole bunch of other stuff going up by about 4%, we end up with a surplus of about $287,000 projected. That's all things being equal. Everybody comes in where they say they were going to come in. The expense side is accurate because we have numbers to go with that now, except for the school.
Trash.
The trash is in here, I believe. The trash collection went up $125,000 on the contract. So we got hit with that. We were pretty good on the health insurance this year. We're lucky. Next year we think it's gonna go a lot higher. So we're, as a conservative number, we're willing or able to present a budget with a surplus of about $300K, all things being equal. Now that will change, obviously, if the capital projects goes over, if we have to pull from free cash, et cetera, and we try not to eat up that levy capacity. That's a real good cushion for us because of keeps the tax rate down, right? So,
Mark, I'm just gonna pause,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm just gonna
If you
pause
want,
you there, if that's okay, Mike's gonna leave, I just wanna open up the question
Yeah, go
before
ahead.
we move on.
I
Does
can sit
anyone-
with you or Zach anytime and we can go over this stuff. Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions on the material that Mark just presented? Jim?
James,
What was the new growth number for?
This coming year.
I'm sorry?
What was the new growth number again for this coming year?
About 500,000.
500,000.
It's on the,
Again,
Oh, sorry.
it's
Do you have
estimated
it broken
at
out by,
No.
industrial and commercial?
no,
Not at this point, no.
Cause
No.
it's an estimate, so.
yeah. And
Do you trend that?
they, yeah,
Zach does.
We
Yeah.
can't,
You're going back,
we
Yeah.
can't.
Yep.
you do.
I provided
Is it,
you with last year.
absolutely. I mean,
No, no.
Pass it
is
on.
it benchmark by any chance?
no, about 5 years ago, it was over 1 million. We had a couple of new buildings in town. If you get new developments, that increases the new growth as well, but mostly it's commercial side.
Yeah, it's also, you build a new garage in your property, they come
Yeah, you
out,
change the
that's,
value of
that's
the
part
house,
of
yeah.
new growth as
Okay.
well.
Right,
Yeah.
so, I mean, the 500 is about a conservative number, and that's what's been trending over the last couple of years. We did get hit a couple times, we were a little short, and, that hurt. So, that's where we are on the standard balance sheet that we use on the FinCom side, the town side, to recommend budget to the town. What we do is, everybody gets a budget sheet with last year's numbers, with the 2.5% or 2.25% increase, whatever the recommendation was. Those numbers are already factored in. The only thing that is not factored into are the salary lines, and each department fills out their own salary budget increases based on their contracts and whatever else the requirement is. And so when that comes back to the FinCom, everybody is typically over the 2.5% by some little amount. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm very involved in putting this together. I work with the financial analysts and FinCom as a whole. So, just to put a different perspective on it, what we really try to do here is have a goal-driven budget process. And like that bottom right-hand side, when you're looking at stabilization, you're looking at capital projects, that's like goals we set out for the town at the beginning of the year. Like, what do we want to accomplish this year? And we know we've been working very diligently with our capital project plan, and it's pretty extensive. So we're trying to earmark a certain amount of money set aside to pay for those. That has not happened yet, and most likely it really won't, to a degree, happen at the annual town meeting. A lot of this is really gonna take place at the October town meeting, including that levy adjustment. So this is, we sit down, what do we wanna accomplish? Things you don't see here that we set out as goals is really trying to control the tax rate as well. So that number there of 3.2 million is our starting point for a purpose. It's not just pulled out of the air. By doing that, it really keeps the Proposition 2.5 tax levy increase at 2.5%. Because one important point that needs to be made, I say it over and over again, but it's really difficult to grasp, is when you look at the top left-hand corner, that levy number starting point of 65 million, that's what it could have been, not what it was last year, what it could have been. And last year, we had 3.2 million of excess levy capacity. So by not having this levy adjustment on the bottom right-hand side, you're theoretically increasing your taxes by law by 2.5% plus $3.2 million, which is closer to 5%. So if we were to go right to the levy limit this year, you're looking at a 7-8% increase in taxes. So that's just a little kind of basis of why we do that, and to take it full circle, how it fits into the overall goals and objectives. So again, like when we set out on this, it's steady growth in the tax rate. We know that there's salary increases. We know that the cost of living simply goes up. We know that taxes are gonna go up. It's how do we control that? How do we get that to a reasonable figure? And the best way I see fit is we set out these goals and we try to stick to certain aspects. So I've had conversations with a lot of yous individually, and Joe, you've asked me to see some long-range planning for expenditures and revenue, and expressed to you how difficult that is, especially when one particular year you might see a health insurance increase of 15%, you know, so that just makes it really difficult moving forward when your starting point right off the bat doesn't hit. This year, due to circumstance, we're in decent shape. Health insurance actually came in around 6%. but what you don't see, what Mark handed out, is the full submitted budgets from all departments. I sent that to you this morning. And there's other areas of town that are looking for significant increases as well. But overall circumstance shows that, to Mark's point, the original impact we had was around a surplus of 300,000. With a 4.9%, we're looking at a deficit of 256. But to translate that, what that really means is your excess levy won't be 3.2 million. It'll be 3.2 million minus your 256,000.
And does that-
And if you do that, Zach, what happens? If we have 3.2 million that we're applying against the potential levy of 65 million. If we say we only use half of that, 1.6, what happens?
So your increase you'd be looking at would basically be the 1.6 million, the
Yeah.
1.5 million, and the 500,000.
But I
which
mean,
would percentage-wise would probably translate to like.
I was thinking about the taxpayer, on the taxpayer
Yeah.
side, okay? That's what I wanna.
I think you said about 7 or 8%.
7 or 8%.
If you used all
If you-
3.2.
the
If
other-
you used all 3.2, I'm saying if you used
Right.
half of it,
The other point,
Correct, not just the two.
not just the
Okay.
56,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't want, right.
the other point about the levy is that if we tax to the limit, to the levy limit, and there's no excess the following year, when you come in with a 3.5 or
Ain't
4.5%
Yeah.
increase, and everybody else does, we're talking about overrides. You can't get that back. That's the problem.
Yep.
All right? So being concerned, and that's what towns around here do. Franklin goes for an override every single year, just about. Hopkinton, Holliston, they all are at their levy limit because they're not as conservative as they could be. And that causes issues. We're not in a position to foster that, okay? Our objective is to keep that levy capacity in case we have some real issues.
And we understand that. So I just have a couple of questions, either for you or for Zach. So, and I understand the 3.2 million excess levy capacity. The thing that stands out to me is when you look at the historical analysis of the excess levy capacity, it's just within the last couple of years that number's really ballooned. Prior to that,
I'm sorry.
the excess levy capacity, it's just been the last couple of years that it's ballooned over 1 million and now 3.2 million. Prior to that, it was always around 500,000, 800,000, 300, 175,
Correct. And we had some-
397.
but
So why
he'll
the balloon?
He'll tell you, we had some extraordinary situations that occurred with health insurance and one or two other things that allowed the levy to grow. Okay, allowed that capacity to grow. And we sat on that, purposely sat on that.
But what's a reasonable number? Like, at what point does it start to become excessive?
I'm gonna answer your first question first. All right, so the past 2 years, I've also provided you with the analysis of what free cash certification has been, and both those numbers have been completely through the roof as well.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for that, the largest component of that is our health insurance budget had grown to a number that was completely satisfactory, plus over $1 million. So by doing that, that means in those particular years you had raised and appropriated, or you had created a budget that was larger than it needed to be. So we had pulled out, for this current year right now, we had pulled out over $1 million out of the health insurance budget, which if you do that, in itself creates excess levy capacity, because now you're not budgeting to that level, you're not taxing to that level. So that's one of the main reasons, and that's also goes tandem with how free cash got to a very large number. Free cash is quite complicated. There's lots of moving parts that go into that figure, but 2 years in a row, we had over $5 million in free cash. So because we knew we had a budget larger than was necessary, therefore equaling taxation that may not have been necessary at that time, we had applied it back to the tax rate at an aggressive rate, and still maintaining enough free cash to satisfy other areas of capital increases, rolling forward to clear the snow and ice deficit, which we'll have the luxury to do this year as well. So again, it's kind of circumstance that had caused that, and I feel like now we're in like a checkpoint where that health insurance budget's now back to an appropriate level. We're not going to see much surplus this year. At the same time, Mark mentioned a little bit about this earlier, we've increased our local receipts figure over the past couple of years to a more realistic figure, so we'd have been very conservative with that as well. So when free cash comes out, it's really, forget about like excess budget. It comes down to basic accounting, almost like retained earnings. So what your actual expenses were, what your actual revenue was. So if we had this large number in health insurance that we were not hitting, our expenses were not there, yet we collected taxes as if it was supposed to be there. Our revenue was much higher than we expected it to be, and our expenditures were lower than we expected it to be. And 2 years in a row, that created a very large surplus, AKA free cash. Last year, we put the squeeze on both sides, which ultimately inflated this $3.2 million. So by not really doing much out of the ordinary as far as like applying additional money, we created it just by tightening up those two areas. So I've talked to individuals about this. One of my concerns is that, one, we had done that, so we kind of, in my opinion, lost our ability for large free cash figures. And at the same time, this go-around, this annual town meeting, we had a surplus of $1.8 million in free cash, of which I anticipate every penny of that to be spent at this annual town meeting. Clearing snow and ice, the Chromebooks, and there's a whole array of different monetary articles.
On the Chromebook, yeah.
Yeah, I knew that.
Wait
You know, say that does happen.
He's been thinking of that sentence.
I know, exactly. Say this does happen. We're gonna go into, as of 6:30, even if I had free cash, it's no longer available until I recertify it and the state certifies it. If we spend all this, I think this is gonna be like set the trend for future years of what we're really gonna see for free cash numbers. I certainly do not think it's gonna be that large, but I'm still hoping for something like $3 million. But at this time, I have no idea. We still got a few months left of revenue and expenditures. My point in that is, I know it's very technical, but that's really how we got to how large excess levy has grown. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's almost like self-insurance, to Mark's point. I mean, if we needed to go with a larger increase in certain areas, we could do that without the need to ask for an override. But once we close that gap, moving forward, like the projected numbers, that's it. If someone's gonna look for something in excess of 2.5%, it would in fact take an override unless all of a sudden state aid goes to the roof or something like that.
But is
That's
there,
going the other way.
yeah,
One more point, if I may. Before Zach came, Phil and I have been on the committee a long time, and there were years we had negative free cash. And there were years the average free cash number was about $1 million, and that was squeaking through. So to see the numbers that we saw the last couple of years, it was like Christmas. And we did a lot of things with that money. We paid off debt, which reduced the amount of money in the capital, the operational budget that we have to spend on debt. And we're gonna do that again this town meeting. We paid off the armory, $5 million cash. We wrote a check. We bought a fire truck for $1.2 million. I mean, we put money in savings accounts that we can utilize in the future to do the kinds of things that I know your team wants to do, like do some renovations in the school. We have another $150 for that. It's there. And as we know this stuff is coming, they missed that one, Scott.
we got it. No, we just ignored it.
Give me a break. You know, my kids call that a dad joke, all right? So we try to project far enough out into the future, so when we do come up with a $10 million expenditure, we'll have the money, as opposed to going to an override or cutting taxes or cutting the budgets. We've had to do that a number of times, and it's not fun. And we had to do it to the school. We go back to the Romney days. I mean, he cut the budget to the town $3 million. We had to cut $2 million out of the school budget.
Yeah, I mean,
It was not fun.
We understand there's obviously a balance, right? But when you start to see that number increase to the point that it's increased to, at some point it comes at the expense of services. So there's a balance there. So I was just curious to know if you had a target for what you wanted excess levy to be.
But our operating budget has kept up with the services. I mean, it's grown just as much. So, just this past year, we've added a bus service. I mean, we continue to add services to town. It's not like we are inflating the levy capacity at the expense of town services. We just haven't our levy capacity has grown faster than an operating budget, and we haven't needed it.
And so, if we go back to the proposal that Zach touched on, the $46 million one, the 4.9, right, where there's a deficit of
That's in
200
here.
grand, right?
4.9% is in here.
Mr. Chair, I think, I do have to leave shortly too,
Yeah.
but I'd like to help interpret the actual chart that, shows the taxpayer,
Yeah.
projections.
Yeah.
So.
Is that the
if
first
you-
page?
No, it's about the third page in from the one that I gave you guys.
It's the page right behind our,
Yeah.
the sheet that looks like this, Kev.
Yeah,
It's
the
the
lower,
page right behind it.
lower left-hand side, it says 4.91% school increase.
Yep, I gotcha.
Okay, that shows $192,836,000 deficit in the P and L.
Yeah.
If you look behind that, it shows the increase in taxes on the right-hand side. Okay, an average single-family tax will go from 48, this is a house for $289,000, a $300,000 home. The average tax bill will increase from $4,800 to $5,013, so a $300 increase, almost $250 increase.
But not specific to that
Yeah,
negative 200,000, it's the
Exactly.
total budget.
no, as I
Total,
said,
yeah,
all
total
the,
numbers.
yes, total budget, but all these
Yeah.
numbers, other
Yes.
than the school numbers,
It
were
is.
factored in.
Definitely.
Everything
new
is,
budget.
everything is fixed, the only thing we're adjusting is the school budget.
School budget. So we've already gotten everybody's increases. And so what we're saying is if we make the school budget 4.9 instead of 2.5, it's a $200,000 deficit and the tax rate goes up $200. The tax bill goes up $200.
151,
Pardon me?
$151.
Yeah. About $200. But that's an average home of 289,000, so, you know, we round up in finance.
And so,
Unless it benefits us, then we round down. And the commercial rate is right below that. The commercial tax bill will go down, actually. No, go up, $800. Sure.
The 314,000 on the health insurance
300,
That-
where are you?
that Kevin showed in the slide,
Let me go back. to
with
this
the,
slide.
by cutting the 15 BATAs and the 2 teachers, right?
That, no impact on the.
Why wouldn't that
operational budget.
come out of the employee benefits line? It
Does.
wouldn't, it does.
Yeah, there's a total reduction when we get it over there. But
That's
that's-
town overall, that's not school specific.
But it's still 314,000.
That's also that.
Well, it's a
budget.
potential 314. I
That's
wanna
All
be- I wanna be- I
right, it's
wanna be clear on
potential,
that.
okay,
So
sorry.
versatile that, like, that's
Correct.
why it got out of control before, and we already
Okay.
reduced it over $1 million, so it'd be extreme.
Greg,
Just think
it's-
about it,
it's
a
$17
couple
million
people
dollars.
switching from a single plan to a family plan.
It's gonna have an impact.
It's gonna have an impact,
Yeah,
and that's
some.
one that we never wanna go deficit in, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
If you have 15 teachers that have babies this year, that are having their first children this year,
yeah,
that are on the town insurance, that
numbers
way
go
over.
up. And you have
Okay.
young teachers now, so the benefit of young teachers are they are healthier, but the downside is they have more kids and they do other things,
So
so.
just,
The,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
the
Yeah,
number
go ahead.
fluctuates up and down. The 300K is a good number, but it's not,
hey, Mark, just,
not significant to the 17 million.
And
I
you
just wanna
can't use
interrupt you
it.
real
Yeah.
quickly here,
Go
just because I know Zach has gotta jump real quickly.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure I'm looking at the right numbers here and doing my math correctly. So in the packet that you gave us, Mark, that front cover page, I'm looking at the one that looks sort of like that.
Yeah, that's all things being equal.
That's right, so that,
2.25%.
I just wanna make sure that I'm looking at that correctly. That one is taking into account a school budget increase of, total increase of 3.75, is that correct?
No, 2.5.
No, it's 3.7.
375,
Yes.
next page.
No, not that one.
No,
So you go
We
to the
don't
page
have-
The
before.
first page,
Yeah.
first page is our budget.
3.7.
says with school at 3.5.
That's at school at 375.
I promise. Yes.
That's what I thought. So I just wanna make sure I'm reading this correctly here.
Yeah.
So that's saying that the average tax bill for single-family homes will increase from 120, will go up $135, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, the average valuation, the average tax bill for commercial will go up $679.
Correct.
Okay,
Now, keep in mind, like, this is
No, I
super
got it.
apples to apples, like, we have a dual tax rate,
No,
assessed
I got it.
values fluctuate.
No, I
So,
got it.
Will this be
I just-
true? Probably not, but this is the only way I can make this
no, I got it.
exercise
What I wanna just,
feasible, you
what
know?
I'm looking at, Zach, and the reason why I asked the question is when I then go to the page where we're at 49,
Yep,
where we're at 491, I just wanna make, again, this is just for clarity and make sure I'm reading the paper.
Right on the
page
top
correctly.
page, there should be a section
I
that
got
does
it.
tell you what it is.
I got it. It says
Yep,
491.
okay, Perfect,
So I'm
perfect.
seeing the increase of the,
Yes.
of the proper, single-family home. Instead of being 135, it's 150.
You got it.
And instead of for the
This
commercial
page.
property, instead of being 679, it's 754.
You got it.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I'm reading the numbers
I
correctly.
do wanna add
He's
to
on
that,
the-
you drew my attention to, something,
Thi-
Scott,
just-
so,
I need to correct, this top page that you have
yeah,
is not the 3.5% budget. That's this budget, the 2.25%, where we have a $300,000 surplus. I don't have one for the 3.5%.
okay.
So it's
So,
two
so Mark, the two
It's
point
375.
two five,
It's 375, Mark.
the front page,
Yes.
right?
The front page on the balance sheet
So this first page here,
is not that,
but that's a
2.5.
2.5, right, so let's say that's a 2.5, okay?
Right.
So when I look at the tax bill
Yep.
for FY eighteen, the average tax bill is gonna be $4,997,
Right.
right? So now go to the 4.91, the average tax bill is gonna be $5,013. So the average tax bill is really only going up by $16 from the 2.5 to the 4.9.
To fund that 250,000.
To fund that, right,
Correct.
right,
Right.
okay.
It's
So to
375,
get
I'm
from,
positive it is.
yeah, but either way, to get from that starting point to the 4.91 where we wanna be, it'd be an additional $16 in taxes,
To the
the
average
average bill.
tax bill.
Right,
right?
Yes.
which,
Okay.
which makes sense.
Right.
Okay. So, and I know Zach's gotta go, the other question I had, so that negative the $200,000, obviously that can be addressed through the tax levy. But I assume we have other levers, right? So
Correct.
you wouldn't go right to the levy right away, you'd look at other opportunities first to fund that before you went to the levy, right?
Correct.
So what are some of those things that you would look at before we go to the levy?
Well, once we, obviously, again, all of this really comes full circle when we get into October. So, and that's when we have our special town meeting. That's also why you hear us all the time saying we need to save capital for October, because at that point, I know exactly what we have. Right now, this is all estimates. It's realistic to the best of our ability that this is what is going to happen. I don't know that, you know? It could be better, it could be worse. Once we flow through this meeting, once we get into October, right around September, October, I'm gonna have free cash certified. The state numbers are finalized. I know what I'm gonna do for local receipts. The operational budget is set. We're reviewing capital projects and any other monetary items that may or may not come up. And we're also gonna do our stabilization contribution or withdrawal at the time. So at that point, once we know exactly what all our available funds are, we can look to see to other opportunities to really see how can we make our goals and objectives, as I talked at the beginning of the presentation, work, you know? And, at the same time, that doesn't mean let's just spend our money either. We want to make sure we're in the same position we are right now, so we can clear a snow and ice deficit, we can handle some of the $1.8 million in monetary articles that are on the warrant outside of the operational budget. So it's really a balancing act, and we really could look at that time to tighten up all these areas. So again, we're very much in estimate stage, but it's, I wouldn't call it necessarily conservative or aggressive. I like to use the word realistic. This is what I think will happen.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Go ahead. So, one of the things that just asking, with regards to the school budget and some things that we're looking to do, whether it's initiative, one-time expenses, things of that nature. I know a lot of our one-time expenses we covered out of school choice. Are there things that we could potentially do, and Kathy, I guess this question is for you, are there potentially some things that we can either put on hold or pause, and delay from expense incurrence until the fall town meeting, when there may be a greater clarity, where there will be a greater clarity of exactly what that impact may be, because
We don't typically change budgets in October.
Yeah.
no, I'm talking about, that's what I'm saying, one-time initiatives, and again, we've gotta, at the end of the day, we've gotta think creatively, right? So we're trying
Right,
to think
but-
creatively to be able to say, so that's why I'm asking Zach.
But Scott,
So, hang on, Mark. And Kathy, are there things that we have that are included within our budget that are adding to our increase, that are not incremental costs, it's not budget? I realize that the largest impact is people and special education. Are there some pieces that we may be able to look at that are single occurrences that we could say, you know what? These are nice to do, these are things that we would really like to be able to see if we had to go through a cut with minimizing impact to teachers and to staff and head count. Are there things that we could say, you know what, we'll put this on hold. We really would like to do these things, we really need to do these things, we'll put them on hold with the understanding of if we may come back and ask for some of those things at town meeting in
Well,
October.
I'll be honest with you, Scott, as you know, we've already cut
Mhm.
almost 750,000. And we're at the point right now where we're at significant salaries.
Okay.
And the only thing I could say to that is that that would be obviously a brand-new strategy for the school and FinCom to be going and requesting funding in October.
Yep.
So I think that would require a
don't.
discussion
You're right.
amongst schools.
And that's why I'm asking the question, because it is not something that's typically done, but it's also, to your point,
Yeah.
it's a massive difference, and
Everything's
it's,
possible, but that was one of the questions we asked at the last meeting.
Right.
The initiatives that you're trying to do are gonna be taken out of choice money. You have over $1 million in choice money, and you're gonna reduce that to about $500,000, which is where we like to see it. So we want you to use that money for those particular things.
Okay.
And continue to do that, and not use it for the operational budget.
right, and I'm not an
Because it's
advocate of
non-recurring.
using
Right.
choice for operational funds, it's
Right.
not
So you have the
something,
money, and you're gonna get another $600K this year.
Okay.
So use that money for the one-time cost, because it's actually the same money,
I got
you
it,
know.
it's just more of it's
I know.
in an interest to try and find a creative solution here.
Yeah.
It's worth asking the question.
Along those lines, just going back to the levers that you have available to you on the town side. So if we're looking at the negative 200,000, I'll just round it out.
Oh, you're back to the 4.9.
But yeah, I'm gonna stick with that 4.9 mark.
Stick with it all you want, huh? Makes no
So,
difference to me.
If we're there, you know, obviously, we don't know how things are gonna shake out, right? So they could shake out in our favor, or they could go the other way, right? So one option is to tap into the levy, which means more taxes, right? It's the $16 as an example. I assume another option, again, you guys know this more than I do, but we've got the 23 million in stabilization, right? So couldn't you take more of that to pay the debt down, take another $300,000 or $200,000 towards a debt payment from stabilization?
We're doing that.
I would, at that point, I would say, rather than putting 500,000 in, you'd put in 200, put it in to take
Right,
it out.
gotcha.
But
Yeah.
yes, that's certainly doable, but then that kinda goes back into won't accomplish one of our goals we try to set out for, which, you know.
It increases our future borrowing costs because we'll have, one of the reasons we have such low borrowing costs is because we have such a healthy stabilization account that could cover our bonds in the event of a catastrophic event.
Right.
Right. That's part of the rule of the stabilization account, that it's a rule. We would not like to reduce the stabilization account less than 2 times the debt limit, which
Yeah.
is $7 million. So the only money we take out of the stabilization account is for excess debt capacity, which in this particular year or the next 20 years is for the Woodland School. So the $3.5 million that's in the operational budget now for debt payment, the $2.5 million in addition to that we're gonna have to pay out of, for the bond for the school will come out of the stabilization account. Part of it will come out of the stabilization account. And we'll reduce the stabilization account over time. And the reason we put 500 back in is the calculations that we did at the very beginning of this project, projecting the lowest limit of the stabilization account at 7 million,
Right.
required us to put that 500 offset in every year at a minimum.
On that topic, I had a quick question for Zach before he leaves. On your March 30th meeting, I believe, Scott, you brought it up that the Woodland debt is still not calculated
In net school spending.
in net school spending.
Correct.
In the state,
He's asking a question.
Sorry, Zach. So the borrowing cost for Woodland School is not yet calculated in net school spending. What is that impact going to be when it is calculated in?
I haven't been able able to fully run all the numbers, nor do I know what the other states are gonna be, so I don't know, but what I do know is this year was $2.6 million for, principal and interest, so, I mean, it's a decent chunk. I think you've actually run better
That's a
numbers.
significant number on
Yeah,
that.
so,
Per pupil cost.
so it's a $600 increase, but, net school spending doesn't, I'm sorry, per pupil spending doesn't factor that in.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
when you look
they
at
do.
it, no, they don't. When you look at the DSE website, they don't factor in payments for schools.
No, payments for debt.
And
It's
they don't
payment.
factor in payment for debt.
Finance director?
I thought they did too. I know they don't
that's
do
part of their
They
school
don't.
spending.
I know they don't do
Yeah,
capital,
they-
which is the
They
actual
don't do
expenditure
grants,
side.
I know that.
Right.
I always
Right.
understood it to be the debt.
So it's not
load.
factored in. So if you would have factored in for us,
take it.
you'd have to factor it in
They
for
do-
everybody
they
else,
do,
right,
yeah.
which would drive the state average up. So it's not factored in. But again, it's still only $600, which doesn't put us where we want to be. But that's a whole other conversation. But just going back to the stabilization, because I did pull up the Woodland analysis that was done. And obviously, we didn't bond the 33 million or 34 million that we originally thought we were
Right.
gonna bond. We got a
Right.
much more favorable
Right.
rate than we originally thought we were
Right.
gonna get. So
There's
the
also due to
projection-
our
Most
free
of that came
cash
from
levels.
one-time revenue
Yeah.
Right,
events.
and free cash. Don't forget, it came from free cash. We offset the bond by free cash.
Right, but my point is, if we have to lower the amount we put in stabilization, it's not gonna have an impact in the overall.
I don't know that to be the case. Okay,
It's
and you could tell me, if you could tell
substantially
me,
lower.
if you could tell me what the next couple of years will be for capital requests that will require bonding, I'll be happy to reduce that. I recommend we
And I was just
reduce that.
responding to the comment that was made a little while ago about how it impacts our ability to finance and get favorable rates. Like, we're gonna have a much larger stabilization than we originally projected,
Not
based on
signi-
the analysis.
Well, what is it at, 14 million now, 15 million in that account?
18.
18 million.
18.
So when we're done, we originally projected about 12 million max, or 13 million max before we started paying, if I remember correctly. And that would, at 500,000, would reduce over 12 years or something like that to around 7 million. It was a critical number, 8 million. I don't have the analysis in front of me, I'm just trying to remember it, because we worked on it a long time. Without putting that 500 in, Joe, we would have gone almost negative. We would have used up the whole stabilization account. So, we never factored in the extra free cash numbers we had those couple of years. We threw a lot of money into the stabilization account. And we put it into the other account where we fund capital, out of that, long-term capital.
Yeah.
That's how we're paying for the fire truck, cash, out of that account. So it's not, from a finance point of view or a budgetary point of view, it's not a good thing to do to use savings to offset operational costs. The same thing as using choice to offset operational costs. It's not something we would do willingly. You may have to, tar and feather us and send us out of town to do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'd rather walk away with a bigger savings account and know that if something happens, or if somebody comes up with another major project like Godfrey Brook, which is 56 million, and or what's the other one, the EPA one that's going to cost us 38. Stormwater management's going to cost us 38 million. I mean, we have a place to take the money. If we start reducing that savings account when these things occur, I think it's going to put everybody in a very difficult position, including the
But
school
we're not,
department.
I'm not asking to reduce the savings account, I'm asking to reduce the amount that gets put in
It's the same
in a
difference.
given year.
Not putting it in and taking it out is the same thing.
But if we originally budgeted, again, we're getting into the weeds here, but we
Right.
originally budgeted 500,000 every year to stabilization and.
Yeah.
So I guess, let's get to the bottom line. So the bottom line is, if we move forward with the 4.91, can the town afford it?
No. First of all, we're not agreed to move forward with a 4.91 from where you left off last year. We still have $1.8 million to take care of that you're gonna
Right.
give back to the town.
Right, but the question is, if we would move forward with the 4.91, can the town afford it? This year?
Town can afford anything you want it
I
to
mean,
afford.
I
The
mean,
impact is
I
not
do have
gonna
to
be
leave, so I
good.
just wanna have just one more, and I gotta head out, but the exercise clearly demonstrates, yes. That would still leave about 3 million in excess. Due to circumstance, this isn't the most devastating thing in the world. Yes, it is achievable. You see the projected percentages. Does that mean it's gonna happen that way? No, but this is my best guess on what would happen. And actually, Mark, I was trying to give you this earlier, but now that all the other budgets are in, that 4.9 really equates to about a 3.2% increase with all everything else being equal, you know? So, this particular year, again, due to circumstance, it's not devastating, it is doable. It is beyond what we wanted to do for a final tax increase, the way this exercise mathematically comes out. But I think what these guys are really trying to drill home is this cannot happen year after year after year. Well, that will be that crossing point. There will be that point where we say it's not affordable without the need for an override. Circumstance can happen completely the other way, you know, and I've had these individual conversations, you know, and I think we get that, like, and I know you're trying your best, you're at 6.6, we're down to 4.9, it demonstrates it's affordable, you can do it, it's just not gonna be where we wanted it to be. But, again, due to circumstance, it's not completely devastating this year. Next year, could we be in a different position? Yes, of course we could. But, and what is that going to be? I don't know. We got some big ticket, the other reason we're all nervous about these big ticket items that are coming down the road, you know, where, I gotta go back to the selectmen, because we're talking about the possible acquisition of the water company. We have, stormwater coming down the line that's really being looked at as possibly an additional department. If that happens, I mean, everyone's gonna have to tighten up, and we're in phase 2, which kicks off this year. So this coming October, we're gonna start allocating money towards that, of which totally could turn into an operational budget. So it's not necessarily this year that I'm concerned with, it's future years and really just trying to, if anyone's ever watched me give presentations, the one thing I say all the time, the best way to control the tax rate is to control the operational budget, and that's just bottom line, you know. So when we came in with an 8% projected increase for health insurance, and we ended up with 6, that's kind of the circumstance I'm talking about that could allow for this to happen. But could that happen next year? Probably not. We won't be looking at a 10% increase in health insurance, which could flip the script on us, but.
That's the biggest problem. Can we afford it? Can afford anything, okay? The question is, at what cost?
Right.
Do we afford it? And again, you guys are talking about a $46 million budget that I'm not comfortable going forward with, because there's still that. And we're gonna talk about that, and that's gotta come out of this budget.
All right.
So,
So Zach, you gotta leave,
yeah,
right?
Zach's gotta go.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. So before we jump into the yellow spreadsheet, anyone have any other questions for Mark at this time, or the committee? Okay, all right, so we can go.
All right, well, if you all look here, we talked about this the last time. And I don't care where you start, but these numbers, if you wanna discuss them, we can absolutely discuss them. But there's the 853,000 we talked about at the very beginning.
The only number I couldn't account for, Mark, is the 139, 149, and I'm just not sure where that number's coming from.
Coming from your spreadsheet. Not that one. It's last year's number, I have it. By the way, I don't have the electrical with me. Kevin, I'm sorry, I can get that to you.
Okay.
But the numbers I got from Zach.
I just wanna make sure I understand where you're coming from with the number, cause the other ones I kind of get and could figure out, that one's the one I
Alright.
couldn't figure out.
I have that. Okay, if you take last year's summary sheet. I got too many papers, that's my problem here.
We all do.
Okay. On the right-hand side, it says expenses contractual technology, surplus $139,149. Is your number.
Yeah.
Which, is that
This is
one of your versions?
2017 worksheet.
Is that on the other sheet that you handed out, Kat?
Yes.
Reiterations of our
Yeah.
budget, but essentially.
That wasn't the final
100
number.
Well, no, that's, see,
See, that's why.
this is the one that you gave us last year.
Yeah.
This is the one that you just gave us, and those numbers aren't even close to the same.
But do you have the final one that we ended up working on?
This is the one that was $44,455,000 budget. 4.35% increase,
We were 44.91 last year.
Right,
whatever.
Right,
so that's
Let's
probably one of the first or second iterations of the budget.
What I don't understand is how a surplus turns into a deficit. I mean, a deficit, yeah, how a surplus turns into an expense. On this one, you had expenses, contractual technology, surplus, $139,449.
I'm gonna walk over just so I can look at what you.
Don't trip though. This one, you have expenses contractual technology of $600,000.
We don't self-insure.
That doesn't make any sense,
I'll look too, Kevin.
right here. I'm looking at this one,
Yeah, I have some. Where's the number?
right there, right where your finger is.
Okay.
And what is it here? 589,000 to the good. Makes no sense.
So I think you had an earlier version. Can I hand this to
Yeah,
Kathy? so she
can I
can see
just
it?
look at
This is
it?
the one we worked on last year. So shell game.
Kevin?
I'm not.
ahead, Phil.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Joe, I just wanna make sure I understand these non-reoccurring items. I know we're discussing the 139 on this schedule. But the other items, exclusive of the 873, are all in the level service increase. Is that correct, Kathy? I just wanna make sure. You have a level service increase of 2.4 million.
Yes.
Okay? And all of these items, you know, the 107, the 13, the 14, all of those items are part of that level service increase.
So those are extra initiatives.
Is this for FY 18 or 17, Phil? I'm sorry.
18. Kathy,
18, okay.
Yeah, they started with 44,091.
Well, I just wanna know when they defined, you have level service increase, I want to know what that include. You know, we're assuming it includes these non-reoccurring items. I wanna make sure I understand it.
So a lot of those numbers weren't actually part of, some of these numbers were just either earlier in the budget discussion, like I think the number that Kathy's looking at right now that Mark is talking about, the 139, 149. But for example, like the MSC ad for FY 17, that was never added into the budget.
I'm sorry, it definitely was.
Well, that's a big difference here, okay? So
It's right
you
here.
Really should,
You gave us these sheets.
That was the cost of, that was our estimated cost of operating the middle school east. That was never
Right.
an
No,
additional
special
ask.
Yeah, but we used that
consideration
as
for middle
justification
school
For
east.
the budget.
We had
Utilities and maintenance.
$0 budgeted for East for, and we're carrying a deficit right now in our FY 17 budget.
But we-
Mainly because the school committee voted to keep it open, and therefore, we originally agreed till August, Mark. You and I had spoke. I have an email. And what are you going to need for July and August? And I stated at that point, we had a $42 million budget and we would cover July and August. Then we kept East throughout the school year open, and we're running at a deficit. There were no funds. That was an overview of the difference between the two buildings. That doesn't mean that we budgeted that into our FY 17 number. The building was supposed to be going offline.
Can I have that back when you're done?
Yes.
I would think it'd be very important, Kathy,
I need to
to go
understand
through
that.
these items to find out if they're part of your level service budget.
We did not take out any one-time expenses. They are still in that number.
You did not take them out, so,
No.
okay, all right, so that answers the question.
Right, but
But
my
again, I think some of these
understanding,
numbers are not necessarily accurate numbers that were budgeted in though either.
well,
And
see,
some of
that's
them-
my problem.
So you should look at that and button that down.
That's fine, if those
Yeah.
numbers aren't accurate.
Yeah.
My understanding and our understanding last year is you gave us this, these additions, and the understanding was that these additions were included in that $44 million.
Those were, and I'm not sure what else is on that sheet, Mark.
Well, no,
The
it's just two
Woodlands.
things on here.
Okay.
107,000 for the 2 months of middle school east.
No, that was for the full
No.
year, not for 2 months.
No, full year is much more than
And that was just,
107,000.
to Kathy's point, that was just an estimate. That was not a
That's
part
fine.
of our
And-
budget.
So then take.
And we thought we gave you that money to cover that 2 months. And then it was 93,450 for the addition of the new Woodland School. For security system, filters, water treatment, refrigeration, cooling, heat, water, phone, electricity. Increases over the original Woodland School.
Yes, that was given to us by the Woodland Building Committee, directing us what our needs are going to be for the new systems.
And that, we assume that was put in your budget.
It was.
Okay, so that we gave you the
That
extra
number
90.
was, but the 107 was not.
Not the utilities for East. The cost for East was not included in our FY 17 budget.
As an add-on.
No, that's
And,
right.
and,
It
and when we were
wasn't.
building our
asked you-
budget in the spring, East was coming offline.
Correct. And we asked, and you said that at the meeting, and we asked you, what would be the increase for, because you needed the 2 months, July and August, to move out of there. And you said you needed 107,000.
No, that was the
Or-
estimate for, that was the
We
estimate for
absorbed the
operating for
cost.
the year.
We absorbed the cost out of our budget.
It says special consideration. My assumptions, because the annual cost for East is about 300,000.
which I don't even, that was an estimate that came out of the.
That was for
police station.
maintenance.
That was from, I'm sorry, that was from the finance director. That included everything that went into the budget for middle school east, utilities and operational costs, technology, materials, salaries, custodial, salaries, sub overtime, custodial supplies, heat, fuel, electricity, water, maintenance of buildings, contract services, maintenance of building supplies, maintenance of equipment repair, annual custodial service contract.
Right, but
So-
on all those things, Mark, if you go back through the line items you just talked about,
Yep.
so go through one at a time, just so and we'll just talk about it real quickly. So first line item was what?
It was $0, doesn't matter.
No,
Salary, custodial.
Okay, so what's that dollar amount?
It averaged about $40,000 a year.
That
so you take that-
individual moved
So you
over to
take those,
Woodland.
so you take those, you take out
We
some
didn't
of
lose
those
square footage, Mark.
because we're moving some of those people over. And we did shared
Can I clarify
services.
one little point? Mark, when you talk about the 300 and the 108, the 108 was just utilities, not overall operating cost. It was basically gas and electric for a year.
It was building equipment, district-wide, maintenance.
Well, I'm not looking at what you're looking at, but we always used
I'll
108
show you what
for
I'm
our.
looking at. It's what you gave
But
us.
again,
But
that's not what the school
That
committee
was
gave
just-
as part of the budget process.
All
So
right,
let's
and,
set
and the
that
bottom,
record
are,
straight.
okay,
It's
fine.
being
We
taken out
can,
of
let's
context.
discuss middle school east and the
Yeah.
philosophy behind moving middle school east and combining it with Woodland to come up with a number. That was never part of the deal.
I don't know where this sheet came from.
We needed to know what the Woodland budget was going to be, and that's what that number was. What was the increase to the new Woodland school above and beyond the old Woodland school on an annual basis? That was the $100,000. And that went in your budget, or was supposed to go in your budget. The middle school east number had nothing to do with moving to Woodland. That number came out of service, out, total done. You
Mark,
finished
I
with it.
think you're mistaken. I think that the increase in cost was for middle school east operating costs plus old Woodland operating cost, plus there was still another 100 and something thousand to operate the new Woodland.
And we need to see that
Here's the thing,
analysis,
though,
'cause
Mark,
that's
it would
not what I
but to
understood.
Phil's point, it wouldn't matter anyways. On a number of these things, as an example, you just talked about salaries, right? So in
Talk
the
about-
number
I'm
here,
sorry, talk about what?
on the 300,000 number,
Mhm.
that included salaries for staff.
And no, yes,
Yeah.
great, but it
Staff,
was in your
custodial.
budget.
I got that. But we wouldn't back that out, those aren't incremental costs. We didn't reduce the number of teachers.
No,
We just
these
moved
are
them
not
from one
teach-
place to another.
No, Scotty, these are not teachers.
What's the staff you're talking about then?
These are not teachers.
Which you've also-
Salaries,
which you've also
custodial,
shifted over.
So it's custodial staff,
right.
Okay.
Salaries, overtime,
okay?
custodial supplies, it's all custodial and maintenance numbers. These are not
Okay.
operational costs, teacher costs.
Okay, so what are that's what I'm trying to get some clarity on, because some of these costs, when you're saying salaries, I'm like, okay, so who are we paying here?
No,
So
I
that's what
agree.
we're asking.
And, you
So
know,
it's
if
maintenance,
middle
so
school east came
okay.
offline, you didn't take everybody that was working in middle school east and move them over to the new Woodland and doubled your staff.
We move them throughout the district.
We reallocated the staff.
But,
was one-
but that,
one
but
custodian.
guys,
It was one custodian.
One
it
custodian
doesn't matter,
is-
but the.
It
but-
does.
But, no, my point being, it's a philosophy here.
Okay,
The philosophy is the school's coming off of your budget.
right,
You're not paying for the school anymore.
that's correct.
So
But-
everything related to that cost,
But you can't say that, Mark,
why can't I?
because our square footage still needs to be maintained. We're
And
still
what-
maintaining, actually, we're increasing our overall square footage, because we're removing a 70,000 square foot building, and we're adding a 133,000 square foot building. The overall
Yeah.
increase
And-
was a difference, so that
And
one.
tell me what that difference was.
So
Scott.
that one custodial worker, that's what the salary was, which we just agreed on, it was one custodial worker, in order to help continue to maintain the additional square footage that we just added, because we didn't reduce our overall square footage. Unless I'm missing my mark, we didn't drastically reduce our overall square footage
No,
in
and
buildings.
it shows in the utility report you asked me to do, Mark. If you look at
It
Woodland
ultimately
right
moved
now,
we moved one custodian, we moved him from east and we moved him over to Woodland.
On page two, on the page two here, right?
Yeah.
I thought, when I'm looking at the initiative for one maintenance staff member, I thought that was to add a person for Woodland. But it doesn't sound like you already moved the person, why are we adding another
No,
one?
this is district-wide.
It's one
What do you mean
additional
district-wide?
district.
it's not a
where do we
custodian,
need to-
it's maintenance. It would be a skilled worker. Right now, we have one skilled worker, and we're looking to add an additional one with all of the systems at Woodland and district-wide.
So it's not a custodian, this isn't somebody that's moving trash cans or anything like that, this is a,
This is HVAC.
This is
I,
HVAC
then
background.
we need to
This
see an
isn't-
analysis. First of all, all right, you're gonna get me to a point where I'm gonna be not happy. Because I've advocated from the last 15 years that you guys need $1 million maintenance budget for the square footage that you carry. Now you're not gonna come to me and say, well, I increased my square footage, so I want more money. That's not fair. You've never increased that budget to cover the 1 million square feet that you had, and now you're asking me to asking us to increase that budget because you added 30,000 square feet.
No.
It doesn't play,
No, Mark, we're not asking that.
but you are.
How
You're
are
saying
we
you
asking?
took it from middle school east and move it over to Woodland.
Because we're still maintaining the same number of square feet. We still have the same number. So we had, just as an example,
and
we
my
had 10
point-
people before to maintain whatever the square footage
Yeah.
is. We maintained the same number of square footage, we just reorganized what building they're in. We still have the same 10 people maintaining it. We're just, instead of him showing up at building A,
Then
which
why are you
isn't
asking
there,
for an increase in maintenance costs?
because we need a skilled worker to maintain
Well,
this
basically, the
for
net difference is the
systems.
92,000 that Kathy represented, correct?
93,450.
93,400, I don't have the number in front of me. Yeah, the 93,400.
That's it, that's
That's
what
the
we're
net-
talking
that's the
about. We're
net
not talking about
increase.
increasing our
But that
custodial
wasn't,
staff.
that
We're
wasn't
talking about trying
custodial
to-
staff, that wasn't any people.
No. But we're talking about the fact that we've just added a new building that has spectacularly more advanced technology than the one that
100%
we just.
warranted.
I got it. That has a very different level of technology for HVAC, things of that nature, than the one that just came offline, which was slightly above a hamster and a wheel running in circles, right? It requires a different level of skill set to be able to maintain those types of things such that it's not.
I would
an
like
issue.
to see the analysis.
I'm sorry?
Do we do contracts for that?
That's a great question.
For which
For
piece?
for the maintenance piece, don't we do contracts?
That's a good
We
question.
do, we have warranties connected to a number, and Rob would better be able to answer the specifics of that. But it's a combination of on-the-ground support that we have, as well as contracted services based on warranties, depending on the age of the system.
Fine, we can table the middle school east costs. I'd like to see an analysis from you on what the differences or the incrementals are for middle school east and old Woodland versus new Woodland.
And that's the 300,000 we're talking about?
But again,
Okay.
I just
Even if
wanna
you
be,
had
that
Well,
was
the
never,
100,000,
that
we're
was
still
never a
at
budgeted number.
44,600.
Right. Yeah, and Ken, Mark, I know you know this well, but I wanna understand the sped surplus of 853,000.
That was their money that we already had that discussion at the beginning.
Well, that's okay, I'd like to make sure I understand it.
The 850,000 was a surplus last year.
Last year, okay.
And
So, go ahead.
in doing the budget last year, they decided to offset the increase to the town by the 853,000 without giving it back to the town. So they kept it and
Yeah, so
and
they
come
u-
back, they used it to
Yeah.
lower the
Yep.
increase, okay? And I'm saying that's not what people do in this town. When you have a surplus, it goes back to the general fund and you start your budget from where it was and you.
And I wouldn't categorize it even as a surplus. I would say the expenses were 800 and what's the number, Kath?
853.
53,000. So the
844.
costs were $853,000 less than the year before.
That's a
So we took that number off
Yeah,
the
we're
top.
talking two different years, yeah.
Yeah, so
We're talking
2017,
16.
we're talking
Talking
17.
Right.
So the difference between
From
16, yeah, so
Yeah,
16 to
16.
17,
Right.
the amount was $853,000 less.
Correct.
We started our budget process, we cut that number from the top. So we took $853,000 less from the top because the number was $853,000 less for that year.
Right.
Okay,
Just,
so-
and Mike, to
So,
clarify, I'm sorry,
so
go ahead.
traditionally, we have budgeted the general budget and then special ed. And then when that number was lower, we didn't separate them anymore. We lumped them together for the increase. So I think that's what, to Mark's point, is where he's getting that number from. We used to separate, if we had separated them last year, I don't know what the.
We
No,
did
that's what
separate
I'm gonna
them
ask, so I was gonna, so that,
Right.
to what your
So
question is,
but
so.
it's two
so-
different-
Let's just stick with Phil,
There's
though,
two-
'cause Phil
No,
started,
this is
and then
Phil's
we'll go
point,
to-
this is Phil's point, so,
Maybe
Phil's point.
it was Phil's point.
Last year's increase was 3.67% for $44 million. If you add $1,900,000 to that, it's a lot bigger number than the 3.67% increase. You kept the money in there to keep the 3.67, which again was over what was projected last year as well.
We did.
Right.
But, so that's the Mark's point, it's like, use the money.
Use the money.
Use the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've
I
been
mean, I
saying we use the
understand.
money.
I understand what you
So
did.
Phil, go
But
ahead.
you almost have two different issues. You have an issue of using the money, and then you have an issue of what it does
to the fiscal 18 budget, right? So really, if I understand correctly, it's not in the fiscal 18
Yes, it is.
budget. Well, I mean, I know we had a surplus, I know we used it,
Then
okay?
Then it's in the beginning, it's in the starting point.
But isn't he taking it out somewhere
No.
over here?
No,
That was, in-
budget
that was, in-
redu-
that was in 17, so the difference was 16 to 17, not 17 to 18.
18,
Right.
okay.
All right, John, why don't you?
Yeah, when you say we had a surplus, we didn't have a surplus in fiscal 16 that went somewhere of 800 and something thousand dollars.
We're talking line by line.
But yeah, so
But yeah,
there was $857,000 less in special ed expenses in fiscal 17 in our budget than there was in the fiscal 16 budget.
Correct.
But we didn't.
But we gave you the 856,016 to spend. You didn't spend it.
No, we
So
spent
it's-
it in
no,
16.
No, you didn't.
We
It was
did
just
spend
the
it in
costs were less than
16.
17.
No.
That's
no.
really what it comes down to.
You
Yeah.
can say it any way you want. I gave you $5, you spent $3, you have 2 left. What did you do with the 2? You kept it for the next year for $5.
That's not,
No,
that's not
no,
what we
that's
did.
not true.
That's exactly what you did.
16 so let me just explain it one more time, and then somebody else can take a shot at it. In 16, we had whatever the budget was. In 17, that was reduced by 853,000 by a number of factors. Kids aged out who were in high expense special ed placements, a variety of things. So we started our 17 ask $853,000 less because the costs were $853,000 less.
But we gave you the money in 16. The
We spent the money in
853
16.
Huh?
We spent the money in 16.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did.
We did.
16.
That's what we're saying. It was the
How can you spend it and have the surplus?
That's
We didn't have a
No,
surplus.
that's not a surplus.
17.
No, it was this, it was the, in this.
Here's the way it works. From July 1st of 15,
15.
right?
And June 30th.
June 30th to ends of June 30th, 16th. Let's use actual calendar dates. That may help. Okay?
You can use numbers.
Yeah, that,
So put numbers there.
good. I'm better with numbers, not so much with words. I'm much better with numbers. So you used from July 1st of 15, okay?
Yeah.
Which is the 17 budget. We knew as we were doing that budget, right? I'm sorry, that's the 16 budget.
16 budget.
Yeah.
When we did that 16
Fully
budget,
spent the special ed
we
budget.
had expenses that included the 853.
Right.
And you
When we-
used it.
And we used it.
No.
Yes,
We did.
hang on one second. We did.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
July 1st of 16, which is now the 18 budget.
17 budget.
Sorry,
Don't-
17
don't-
budget,
yeah.
right? We said, hey, by the way, great news. We've had some students that have moved out. So when we sat down, and we started our budget, we said, you know what? 853 we're going to take out because we know we're not going to spend that this coming year, not this past year, this coming school year that started in September of that coming year.
Okay. So you're
'Cause we
saying
had
it's
those coming
really
out.
not a well, it's not a surplus. You're saying that your estimate for 17 was 815,000 less because of known factors.
Because we knew
That's
it going in, because
That's
it's the advantage of, we already know what's gonna happen coming forward. We had these kids that were, because many of them were aging out.
Yep.
We knew there was a calculated cost, we knew they were leaving. It wasn't that it was somebody sold their house and moved, it was they're reaching age of where they're no longer included. So they're no longer being costs. So we had that projected, that's how we were able to then take our budget and say, hey, next year, we're gonna start our number $853,000 lower, that's what's on here.
And next year's the year we're in.
Next year's the year that we're sitting in as we speak right now. This
No, no.
school year,
Next-
yes.
No, it was 17's budget.
This is.
Right, this is
This is
17's
yeah.
budget. You're
This
sitting in
is
17's
This
budget.
is 17.
We're working on
Yeah.
18.
18
We're
budget.
sitting in 17. When we did the 17 budget, which started July 1st of 16,
Yeah.
we knew that the 16-17 school year was going to include $853,000 less worth of student expenses because those students aged out. As a result, when we did this last year, we came back and said 853 is where we're gonna lower our starting number by 853. Then we looked for our increases from there and our increase in spending. It wasn't that you gave me $5 in 16 and we spent 3, and then
We
we
spent
asked for
5.
another 5. We asked for 5 in 16, we spent 5. In 17, we said,
spent
we only need 3. And we said, so we're gonna start with 3, and then we go forward from there. That was how the budget was actually calculated. Is that
And we're in the opposite
clear,
situation
Phil?
in 18.
Yeah, I actually, yes.
Okay, so that,
Do you understand? Yeah, good, okay.
all right.
So it's
So, good.
20 to 8. I gotta pick my daughter up at 7:45 from CCD. You guys are more than welcome to continue the conversation if you
Yeah, I
feel
just
we
wanna
need to
get to a
continue this
number.
conversation.
That's
What's
okay.
that?
I want to get to a number so we can give give the FinCom a number on Wednesday night.
So I think that number is gonna be the 46
Yeah.
million.
You still, no, you still, I mean, come on. All of this is not baloney.
No, but and I think all this discussion is missing the forest from the trees. At the end of the day, we need $46 million to provide our students with the services that we want to provide our students. And we're leaving a lot on the table even with that $46 million.
Right.
So you can nickel and dime us all you want. If we need $100 and we asked for 50 last year and now you want another 10 back, well, we're gonna ask for 60 because we need that $100. So
I,
at the end of the day, we need the $46 million to provide the students the services we want to provide them.
Yeah.
I just wanna say, we basically started at zero and we built this budget. I have a,
no,
I
you
have a,
didn't,
yeah,
John.
no,
You
we
started
did.
at 44 million and
No,
built the
no, we
budget.
didn't, Mark. I mean, we have all the worksheets. I mean, I would rather have spent this last hour and a half going through every number that we came up with and why we need it, rather than, you know, pulling out things that may or may not have been included in the budget and coming up with a level service budget. But to Joe's point, whether, you know, we may disagree on this number, or whether we agree or disagree, this is what we need. This is what we've built our budget from zero. And that's the truth. And this is, we need the, you know, we as a committee have already voted that we feel we need 46,252,800 to, you know, for the fiscal 18 budget for Milford Public Schools.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I wanna say, sitting on this side of the table from the FinCom perspective, I'm very disappointed in the school community reaction. We ask for data, I get papers in the mail. It's like, it's public data, give me the, so to your point, John, if I can get the worksheet, fantastic. I want every worksheet you can give me. I want it. That would be great, electronically. I don't want a piece of paper, I wanna be able to manipulate and move it and things like that. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, we shouldn't have to beg, it's like, oh, here it is. Come on.
Jeff, it goes both ways. We never got the data. I had to go fish for
Mark
it.
had them ready for the 27th meeting.
You
chose
guys
not to
didn't
have.
show up,
Mark had the data ready.
and I was going on vacation.
All right.
So, in
Yeah, no,
defense of
that's
my-
point
So-
taken.
All right, so let me ask you another question. The sped number that you came up with for your budget, the actual dollar number, I don't even know what that is anymore. Maybe you can tell me. Does that include circuit breaker or not? Is that net circuit breaker or gross circuit breaker?
Question for Kathy.
So it's net circuit breaker.
Correct.
Net of circuit breaker.
It is, but typically what we do is use our FY17 dollars for the FY18 out-of-district expense, so we're always budgeting appropriately with what revenue stream we know we have.
Okay, so the 1.5 or 1.1 million is already taken out of the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And that number
Yeah.
could potentially go up. I think today's proposal
Say
increases
again?
circuit. That number, the circuit breaker could go up based on what the House Ways and Means
Yeah, they
voted on
may.
today.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky to even get anything from
Yeah.
anybody. All right, I'm still not comfortable at 4.91%. I don't know about this team. That's way above. I mean, last year you were at 4.35%. So we need to control this. We need to know what you're doing with the money to make it better for the kids. Just asking for more money to pay teachers is not doing it for us. The numbers on the testing scores and everything else don't play out. And remember, the rule is that we only have to give you net school spending number, not over net school spending number. So we're spending 19% more. Is that okay with you guys? No, you want 30% more, or 25. I understand that. And if I were on your side of the table, I would agree and fight for that as well. But we went through the tax analysis, we went through the budget analysis, and the P&L numbers, and to sustain a 4.9 or 5% increase going forward is not acceptable. So I'll have a hard time advocating for 4.9%.
So do you want us to attend that meeting and advocate?
You can do that. I'd be happy to have you.
What night's that meeting?
Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday night.
What time, Mark?
I'll let you know. The meeting's at 7.
Yeah, means it's up.
I'll have to go look at, it's not on the agenda, but we can put it on the agenda. Yeah, I don't know about this team, but I'm not comfortable doing it. If this team is, then that's fine. It's a majority vote, so.
I'm going to record, I'm not comfortable either, because to your point about the per pupil cost, I'm not there. I'm not on the same page as you, Joe. You wanna throw the state example all the time. We go to the districts, we're 100, we're below some of the districts around us. You know, and within one or $200 above some of the other communities right around us, but yet we're at the bottom of every ranking. Bottom of MCAS, bottom of
We're not at the
SAT.
bottom of every ranking. That's an incorrect statement. It's an unfair statement, and
Oh,
it's
you
not
want-
a
you
fair
wanna go- you wanna go on the list?
characterization.
You wanna go on the list?
No,
We're not,
I-
we're not,
no,
no, we're not,
I
we're
don't
not
wanna
gonna do
do
that
that.
right now. We'll save that for another
That's
conversation,
not
because
the
you don't have all the
conversation for tonight.
information, and you don't have the context, so we're not gonna go down that road right now. So,
Yeah.
all right, so
I do
it's,
wanna-
it's getting late, I gotta
yeah.
pick up my daughter. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion from John, seconded by Jim, all in favor?
I'll let you know what time Monday.